All right, what up, though? This is Prophecy. About to bring you a live presentation of the WR podcast. We just recorded this a couple of nights ago, actually, so we're happy to bring this out to you. This is going to feature a list from AyoRankem on the top 10 PS4 prospects from the MSI tournament. We also got into some discussion regarding the playoffs and some things that we notice in particular from that We Compete Dripping Talent series that you just saw the highlights for. Appreciate the kind words from Fi out there. Kumpo. Pardon if I'm mispronouncing those, but let's get into the podcast, yo. Appreciate everybody tuning in. You're also going to see on your screen a presentation of a series that was played, so you can enjoy that right there on the box above the WR playoff symbol, and that'll continue to play throughout the course of the podcast there. So enjoy that, and here we go, live with AyoRankem. Hey, what up, though? Welcome to the WR podcast. I'm your host, Prophecy. You can catch me on Twitter at prophecy_WR_SL. I got a very special guest, though. We had a fun time on the last pod that we did regarding the MSI tournament and the Xbox side of that bracket. We covered the top 10 prospect list from it, and he did a great job. So the fans and the community wanted him back for another follow-up episode to do the PS4. So we're going to get into that. So I got RankEm back with me today. Thanks for joining me, RankEm. What up, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me, man. We had a great podcast last time. Looking forward on doubling down on that one this time.
Yeah, no question. Have you been watching the playoffs so far? I know you've been creeping in some of the streams, man. I've seen you out there.
Man, I have been going into all of the streams during this playoff. Been a lot of great games, man. A lot of close games, a lot of big games. Just so early in the playoffs, man. It gets me hyped.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. And we did the really fun coverage the other night, and we had some very humbling hosts from Pacers Gaming. Shout out to them and Wolf for hosting that stream. That was really fun. We had some managers checking out that broadcast, so that was a really awesome experience. And I know everybody was supporting that, so appreciate everybody's coming out and commenting and joining that stream. It was kind of like a March Madness thing. That's what everybody was saying because we were like hopping game to game. We kept and stuff kept happening. We had a buzzer beater. We had a couple of really good endings. A couple floods, of course, that happens. But we've had some really good series, like you mentioned, RankEm. We'll talk about a couple of those specifically. But we wanted to talk a little PS4 today, so we're going to go back a little bit in time to the MSI, and we're going to present our RankEm's top 10 list that he's gotten that he covered from the PS4 MSI. So he's got some notes on those players there. But I wanted to talk about a big upset that we had to kick off the podcast here. I was just watching this I was just watching this series on Twitch, the We Compete Dripping Talent series. It went 3 games. It was a round 1 matchup, of course, best of 3. So I know RankEm was in there too. What do you think about that series, man? I thought communication became like a thing in that series, like for good or bad. You know how like We Compete, they tend to get uppity in the streams, and they're really like hyper, and they're yelling and screaming like for positive things and from negative things. So what were your thoughts on that series? Just first of all, RankEm, obviously Dripping Talent came up with the win there in 3 games. Coming back from behind from 1-0. So what did you think about that?
Well, to start off, this was actually a rematch from a previous tournament that they had. So there was already that animosity towards each other coming into this tournament. Coming into this tournament, coming into this series. So I mean, you know, the tensions were high. The tensions were real high. And I want to highlight that because I feel like that also goes into that communication as well. A lot of people.
That's a good point.
You know, people come into the game, some are too low and some are too high. I feel like in this situation, a player like JBM, who was talking a lot of trash about Dripping Talent coming into this series.
He was.
After this, I mean, even told Termite that he was one of the worst point guards on the game. You know, so I felt like he came into this series trying to prove something. And you never want to be in a situation where you're trying to prove yourself to someone. You want to come in and play your game. And we've seen that early. Game 1, a lot of that hypeness, it really helped them in that series. You know, the communication was still fairly good. It's more so JBM yelling at the rest of the players, and then they kind of responded back when they got the time to. But it worked.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
You win the game, so if it's a win, it works.
Yeah. Exactly. And in game 1, get the example of, like, the highs and the lows of that communication problem or issue that we're talking about that ended up being an impact in that series. So we're talking about JVM here, and obviously a super fun player to watch, supremely talented player. Let's make sure to state that as well. But we hear him, he chatters, man. He loves to get hype in the moment. He has that emotion. He has that passion for the game. And we saw some of that animosity come out in some of the communication. That was a fun element of the series for sure. To know that those two teams had a little history makes it even better because you heard some of the chirping going on about the talent level on the other side. So that was always a fun part of watching the player streams. But yeah, I thought like as it turned to game 2, some of that like the highs from game 1 kind of like it became a factor because you have that expectation now. You want to flood them, you want to get out and go for the jugular in game 2, and it didn't go their way. The shots didn't fall, some turnovers, and on the other side, Icy was just filling it up, man, on dripping talent, man. Those guys are hitting shots, and that starts to play a factor in your mentality, and everybody starts getting tense. And I thought that's kind of what happened to We Compete throughout the course of those next 2 games. There was kind of a tension there. There was a little bit of an underlying current of just the communication and the electricity in the air, for lack of a better word. Let me know what you think about that, RankEm, if I'm accurate or not on that.
You're very accurate, and I feel like that, and then just going back to the issues that JBM and Termite had with each other.
Mhm.
Imagine you telling someone that they're the worst PG on the game, and then they score 31 points against your team in the closeout game.
Yeah.
You know, that does something to the psyche. You know, whether you know it or not. Now that third game, it stops being about team. It starts becoming about pride at a certain point.
Right. That's
So,
interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, I think that's kind of how it played out because then it's not about your game plan. It's not about how your approach to the series, your strategy. It's like this mano a mano grudge match, and that can take away from the game. So I think that's a great point, Rankum, for sure. So that oh, go ahead, man. I'm
I was
sorry.
just gonna say, and that played out completely in those last 2 quarters of game 3, where you have someone like a Maverick who is one of the best sharpshooters in the game right now, who wasn't getting his touches because JBM was trying to get his touches. And it was almost like the communication stopped to
Yeah.
where it wasn't that they were talking to each other, it was they were yelling at each other.
Yeah.
In the closeout game,
So
you
that
can't have that.
Yeah, and it played out that way because you see the upset, and it kinda kept breaking down offensively, and, the defense wasn't there, and the talking and getting through those screens and the hedges and stuff, they weren't talking through that stuff in game 3 as much as in game 1, so it all played a factor, communication-wise. So I would ask you on that, Rankum, just to kind of piggyback off that series, like, what are some keys you would think, just maybe 1 or 2 things that off the top of your head that you can think of, just to keep in mind for communication. You watch a lot of comp games. You're out there scouting everybody. You're watching all these teams play. Like the successful teams, what do you think they do communication wise that stands out?
Uh, I'll give you 2 different sides of the spectrum. Um,
Okay.
so let's talk about a leader like a Pete B. Ballin. Pete, is that Pete Ben Ball?
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
You got it.
So let's talk about Pete B. Ballin and how he leads and how he communicates with his players. It's all passive. It's all
Hmm.
passive communication. So I'm not getting too aggressive. I'm not raising my voice with it. It's all
Hmm.
calm. It's all level headed. Hey, we messed up on that last pick and roll defensive play. This is what we need to do to change that. Everything's very
Hmm.
calm. Straight to the point, direct. So let's move over to the other side of that spectrum with JT,
Hmm.
which is interesting to even bring up because Alex Exposum has learned firsthand the differences between those two leaderships. He played
Right.
a lot better under the leadership of Pete B. Ballin than a JT. Not to say that either one is better, but when it comes to communication, you got to figure out what works best for the player that you're trying to communicate with.
Yeah, that's perfectly put, man. That's totally speaks to chemistry on the court and in the party. You gotta have the gameplay and you gotta have the communication in the party because such an important and overlooked part of pro-am ball. It just goes under the radar, I think, and you see it play out with examples like you talk about with players moving from highly competitive team to team and those different leadership styles. You see it impact a role player and how it impacts their game on the court. So that's great points by RankEm. So let me pick your brain one more time on the playoffs. So real quick before we get into your list, I'll just get a straight up pick from you, man. Who do you got on each console? Who's your PS4 pick and who's your Xbox pick? I saw you post your brackets there. We had that $100 perfect bracket prize on the WR Twitch, which I thought was a really clever thing to do. And we saw yours go up there. So who are your picks? I'll rank them on each console.
Well, I like to start by saying my bracket is currently broken, but I like to
Yep.
thank I like to thank WR anyways for even starting this contest. You know, getting people active and making their own brackets. Being able to try to be a prophet. And No Smoke. No Smoke is a team that's competing on both sides of PS4 and Xbox, and they have one of the best teams in the world. Rare Breed, a team that has went under some reconstruction, uh, adding bread to the equation. I mean, adding the number one pick, or a number one prospect in the draft to your team. I feel like that does a lot to the players around him
Yeah,
as well.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a very big deal. You know, so with him and your top lock, a sleeves, and then you add two top tier backcourt players from PS4 in Be Smooth and a Strainer. And I'm not even talking about OMM type who played in the 2K League last year. So that type of roster, it's hard for me to even see them losing before the Final Four or losing in the finals at all. So I have them winning on the Xbox side.
Do you think they might just sweep through uncontested, like not even a problem?
I feel like they're going to have a fairly easy route of it until they get to KMT.
Okay, that's fair.
I feel like that matchup with Caution that could go either way, just because you never know which Vandy you're going to get in one of these matchups. You can get
you talked about that
Vandini,
before.
or you can get Vandy who's struggling a little bit to make his offense. So that's one game that could be the upset to knock them out of the tournament. And that matchup with KMT, as we know, they already have a tournament under their belts. So yeah, I feel like they're gonna make it to the finals, but uncontested, nah, they're gonna take some hits going into this matchup with No Smoke in the finals.
Okay, good. So what about the other bracket? Who do you got in the finals?
And on the PS4 side, I have Breakout and Rise Above playing in the championship, which may surprise some people because they'll look at this and say, hey, Witness the Grind just won a tournament. They should be the favorites to at least make the finals in this one. That's true, but we also never got to see that Rise Above and Witness the Grind matchup, if you guys can remember that far back. So we're still not sure who is the better team out of that matchup. And me looking at it, I see a Rise Above team who one has a grade A top tier point guard in J Money, who is a volume scorer. Witness the Grind doesn't do well with volume scorers at the point guard. They have Phil the Goat, one of those guys who's a high energy guy, and also a top 5 lock on PS4. Kim versus BP, that's going to be a very interesting matchup. And I honestly see BP having a hard time dealing with Phil. You know, he's not one of those players that gets a lot of steals, so you might look at his stats during his recent games before this and say, he's going to be the one to slow down BP. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. But his play style is more get in front of you, get in your face, and stay close to you. There's not too many locks that have been able to do that to BP. I feel like if he can do that, that will make this series very easy for Rise Above.
Interesting points. So we'll look forward to that potential matchup, and we're going to certainly talk more about BP as the podcast goes on. So that'll bring us right into the main event of our podcast here. We're going to unveil Rankem's top 10 prospects. This is based off of the midseason invitational tournament that we've been talking about on both consoles that just completed about a week or so ago. So we're going to dive in to the list here. We got the top 10 prospects. This is Rankem's list here. We're going to go backwards from 10 to 1. So I see the Akatsuki represented here. So number 10, who you got representing the Akatsuki here,
At
Rankum?
number 10, I have Zerlogy, who I'm pretty sure you may not have heard of that name. You may not even heard of the team name or even know how to pronounce the team name.
Right. I had to ask them how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
So
shout
I
out to
understand.
Naruto. Him and his team are just bursting onto the scene right now. Most recently, during the WR Pro Am League, they had a 82% win percentage, which was the highest percentage in a league that had teams like Self Taught, Dire Wolves, NBK, um, some of the best teams. So to have that type of performance and then to come in this MSI tournament as an unknown, as one of those teams that didn't expect to get far, and for them to make a run to the Sweet 16 as an unknown, and to only lose to the eventual championship team, I feel like he played a great part in it. I feel like he deserves this spot on the list. And keep your ears open for a man named Man in a Car. He's a sharp for Akashki, and he is also
Okay.
a top tier player. Expect to hear his name more too.
Okay, word. So we'll look for that. They had a bye, I believe, in the first round, so they'll be playing here in the playoffs so soon. Shout out to Z from the Akatsuki. Tough to pronounce, but not tough to watch on the court. They're amazing, talented, and consistent, like Rankum mentioned. So, who do we got coming in at number 9 here? TW represented. Let's hear who's number 9 on the list. PS4 side.
And at number 9, we have Official Moon. Now, Official Moon, he's not one of those players that's going to give you a lot of stats. But one of the great things about Official Moon is that he is consistent. This year for the PGs, it's been very hard to remain consistent. You'll see games where players will have 30 points and then 3 games later they'll have a 5-point game. You know, players who will have a 3 turnover game will come back 3 games later and have a 10 turnover game. With a player like Official Moon, he's the steadying force on that the world team. You know, he keeps them composed in big games. You know, having a point guard that you know you can count on to be a game manager, you count on to take care of the ball, you count on to find the right players at the right times. You know, and during this whole tournament, he did that. He consistently did that, and that's why he's here right now at number 9.
There you go. Shout out to Moon representing the world. We'll have more representation from them later on in the list. If I could tease a little bit there, but number 8, let's see. DW Follow the God, number 8. So what do you got on Follow the God?
Follow the God is one of the top tier locks in the game right now. And it's for a reason that you wouldn't expect. He's actually one of the more offensive locks that we have in the game. You know, it's very rare that we see locks that can put up 20 points a game consistently, as well as lock down the on ball to lock down their on ball assignment. That's very rare, you know. And had they not lost as early as they did in this tournament, I could see him being higher on this list.
And we'll certainly hear more from them as the playoffs unfold. We'll cover more Dire Wolves as well as we go on here. So let's talk about a team that was very successful, obviously, in the tournament. We're going to talk about the first of 3 of their players that come in on your list here for Witness the Grind. So Chatty Nick coming in at number 7. What are your thoughts on Chatty so far this season, and particularly in the MSI tournament?
Chatty Nick, he's a different type of player. Earlier in the year, he brought in a wave of the shorter sharps, where players were playing with 6'4" pure sharpshooters. he was the originator of that, and he was very effective in that. Moving forward down this year, he decided to take a more traditional approach, and in this tournament, he switched to pure sharp position at the shooting guard. Very traditional, and he still performed at this high level that he's been performing at. Uh, that tells me that he's very versatile. That tells me
Yeah.
that he's someone you can count on when you need to make those adjustments during series, before series, after series. You can move
Right.
him around if you need to. And,
Yeah. I know.
that's one of the themes of this list, versatility, and he's one of the first on this list to showcase that.
Good stuff. And shout out to Chatty. So let's talk about the world a little bit more. We got Czar coming in at number 6. So let's talk about a little bit about Czar. Rankem's top 10 MSI prospects.
And now, if people can remember back to when I did the top locks list on PS4, you would have known that in the top 10, I did not have Playoff Czar on that list. So you may ask, well, what changed between then and now? Well, for one, he played this whole MSI tournament at the highest level for a lock. When he matched up against Goated, who his performance against Goated, a player who is considered by some as the top player on 2K under 18, for him to hold a player like that to 6 assists and 15 turnover, for him to hold a player like that to 6 assists and 15 turnovers in their 2 wins against them, that says a lot. That alone makes you a top tier lock. So for him to double down and do it in the finals, where there are games that BP could not get free at all, that type of skill to be able to say, we want to put you on their best player, and for him to go out there, get on their best player, and make them play at that low of a level, that says a lot. That says a lot about him, and I feel like he earned this position on this list.
Shout out to Czar. Big performance in the tournament there, showing his impact. So here's a player that's out for vengeance right now, I would say, is an accurate way to describe this next player at number 5. So B Ohio coming in here. So let me give me your thoughts on B Ohio right now.
My thoughts on him, surprisingly, is that his stock is kind of trending downward right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they have him figured out at this point. Some would say his game is a little bit limited. He's not the best ball handler, but he knows how to get to the hoop, and he knows how to get to his spots on the floor. That's very important when you're playing point guard, and very understated. A lot of people have a hard time getting open shots, and that shows when they go against top tier locks. A player like B Ohio, he's gonna be able to play his game regardless. Until he faced Witness the Grind, where Dumb Rep figured him out completely, and he held him to a very bad series, and I feel like that said more about Dumb Rep than it said about B Ohio. He was found out at a certain point in this tournament, but before that, he was leading this Dire Wolves team on offense. They currently had a big unit playing a sharp position that he's not familiar with. He's normally their center, so he had him playing in a different position. They had Jay Loading playing in a different position that he normally does. Well, on a different build that he normally does. And B Ohio was that steadying force. His consistency pushed him to this next level. So when those players weren't playing at their highest potentials, he picked up the pace. Against Witness the Grind, it's almost like it hit a brick wall. He couldn't do it all on his own.
And you run into good players like that
Absolutely.
sometimes, and that's not to take anything away from B Ohio. And wins speak for themselves for his squad and him being the head of the snake. You can't argue with wins and losses, and the Direwolves have been right there as one of the top teams and one of the favorites throughout the course of the season. And we'll certainly see if they can continue that throughout the course of the playoffs here as WR playoffs get underway. So let's move it right along. So we're entering the top four here. We've got a good list going. PS4 players. So let's talk about May at number 4. RankEm, what do you think about May?
May, he is the perfect glue guy, right? He's very low maintenance. He doesn't need too many touches, and he can still make his presence felt on the floor. There's games where you will see May only have 6 points and still be considered the player of the game. His rebounding is next level. I'm not sure if there's a big man that can rebound better than him. His pick and roll defense without a lock build is second to none. And his communication with J Money is so flawless. Their chemistry together is one of the best in 2K right now. And all that put together, including their run, that was taken away from them for whatever reasons they were. I feel like he would have made a bigger. I thought he would have made a bigger splash moving forward in this tournament, and that's why I put him right here still. Yeah. So, like I said before, a trend of this list is versatility. Robar is another player that exudes that. He's actually played 1-5 in the Pro-Am. There's not many players that have played 1-5 and been good at it. There's a lot of players who say they're a 1-5 player.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who say they had that versatility, but we're talking about a Robar who's played on the play sharp, a pure slasher,
that's crazy.
a lock, and a pure glass cleaner, and did all at a high level.
Right, that's insane.
Yeah, so that's a theme, and also the point guard and big man combination. All of the great teams have a big man and point guard combination. Period. They might have other pieces that might be more talented, but when you look at these top tier teams, all of them have a big and point guard combination that is top tier, and that's what we see on Witness the Grind as well.
No doubt. All right, so let's go to J Money, big number 2 here. J Money, obviously a huge impact player at this point in the season. So give me your lowdown on J Money as it stands right now.
J Money is just a great scorer. He has great vision. He can definitely get his assists, but he's just a high level scorer. I feel like he's, if not the best scorer at point guard this year, I feel like he's definitely top 5. He
interesting, and you got to have that, just like we talked about the 1-5 or combination on every team that they need, and you got to have that scoring punch, and J Money providing that
absolutely.
for sure.
And him and May, their pick and roll is almost unstoppable. If you know J Money, he uses a shot creating playmaker that can dunk when it gets to the lane. So if you give him too much space on the 3-point line, he's good to score. But also, if you come up too high on that pick and roll, he's getting straight to the lane, and that's an easy bucket. And we've seen that happen over and over again in some games. He actually went on a run where he scored 50 plus in multiple games, where he scored 40 plus in multiple games. He's a great scorer. I feel like he earned this spot at number 2.
Somebody maximizing their build to the full potential and just using it to the premium. So let's go number 1. Witness the Grind coming in with the number 1 player here, representing on RankEm's top 10 MSI PS4 prospect list. So who you got at number 1?
At number 1, and this should come as no surprise, BP's finest is the number one player on this MSI list, and I feel like he doesn't really need any explanation on why. But the best thing I could say is when he has a ball in his hands, he's almost unguardable. He has effectively learned how to mesh the crab dribble with your chaining dribbles. Just hearing that sounds complicating. So imagine
Right.
a lock having to deal with that all game,
Oh,
all
man.
series. And I feel like in that situation with the world, like I told you, Czar played. He did a great job on BP, but after 5 games, they both started learning each other, and then BP started learning a little bit more, and he started doing a little bit more. It's almost like he had something in his back pocket just in case Czar came out and knew what he was going to do. I mean, there's not many players that can make those type of changes on the fly in a series. He did that effortlessly, and I feel like that wasn't highlighted enough in how good he performed. So I wanted to say that, and that's why he's number one.
Well, there you go. So to summarize the list here, we got a few witness the grind players. See how the community reacts to that. They've certainly had the success on the court to warrant that. We got a couple Dire Wolves players. We talked a lot about the 1-5 being such a key part of the meta this season with this particular cycle of 2K, and we've seen that play out in some of these lists. You see a lot of point guard, big man combinations working together, elevating each other, and like RankEm said, they may be talented across the board, but that meta is going to surface, and those are the players that are going to be highly coveted going into the draft and throughout this cycle for the 2K League. It's going to be really exciting. So definitely good stuff from RankEm, man. Any shout outs or any last thoughts that you want to give me? We about a half hour in here. We did a great job covering the playoffs here, and got your top 10 players from the MSI on the PS4 side. So any last shout outs from RankEm?
No, I don't have any shout outs. I feel like I did enough shout outs my first time here. But I
That's
just want
cool.
to
That's cool. Any other thoughts that you
absolutely. I just want to quickly point out what Throwdown has been doing recently.
No doubt.
In the beginning of this year, I feel like we all were very hard on them. They were playing at a low level. They were losing games that they were supposed to win. They were having build issues. Their players were switching around builds constantly throughout that first 2 months. They were constantly switching lineups and switching players. It's like they didn't really know what they were doing. It was almost like they forgot that they were a great team, And the majority of those teams that experienced that at the beginning of the year, they just broke up. They stopped playing with each other. They moved on to better teams. They took friends from a certain person's team and took them to the better team.
Right.
And
Right.
we look at that and we applaud those teams, those super teams, as soon as we see it. Oh my gosh, they just got him and they put him on a team. But we don't highlight the teams that say, hey, we started off slow, but we're gonna stick together. We've been here before. We've been down before. We're gonna stick together and we're gonna move forward. And Throwdown did that. And now fast forwarding to this recent playoff, yes, they lost to Breakout 3-1. Some people would say, oh, that's still bad. But if you watch the way they played throughout that series, this was not the same team that we seen 2 months ago. This is a team that has went through the bumps and bruises, have figured out their chemistry, have figured out what builds work together, and are putting it together to make a team that seems formidable. We will see in the future, they have other tournaments that they're entered in. So we'll see if this track still keeps going up. But I can see that happening. I can definitely see that track still going up. With the new addition, like I said, not too many pieces moved. They kept 4 of their 5 starters, and they added a player named Reese the God, who is a grade A sharp. He was good before this breakout series, but once you watch the breakout series and see what level he was playing at, it might change your mind on where he's ranked
Yeah.
among the others because he was almost unguardable in certain situations. But that lineup, I feel like they figured out something during that process of losing. I feel like they're going to put it together
Yeah.
going into this last half of the year.
All right. That's good stuff. And that was a widely viewed matchup last night. Shout out to everybody that supported those two teams on their streams. I know we had Snowbike Mike out there calling it. Shout out to him as well, doing his thing. I always love listening to Mike on his calls, representing WR. So that we'll look forward to the rest of the playoffs, man. I'm excited to get going on WR Live. We'll have this podcast out as soon as possible for you, and another one with, to come real soon with our guest AyoRankem. You can catch him at AYO_RankEm, just like it sounds. AyoRankem with an underscore between it. And shout out to him for coming through and blessing us with that list once again. I appreciate your time, Rankem. Hope you enjoy the rest of the playoff
Thank you.
streams.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll be back with another edition of the WR podcast real soon. This is your host, Prophecy, signing out. All right, y'all, that'll do it for this edition of the WR Pod. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I want to thank my guest, AyoRankem. Hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, and we'll have more playoff coverage. Let's get a look at the brackets before we get out of here. Updated brackets, courtesy of WR Pro-Am League on the PS4 side. Now we're going to see some more runs. Tonight, get going. Getting into the best of 5 portion of the brackets. Shout out to the Xbox side, logging many games. There's a little hint of sarcasm there, but they'll get it done. They'll get it together. We're all right. And don't forget about the Holiday Classic. Big prizes coming your way. That's going to kick off tomorrow. Courtesy of Gamer Saloon, WR Pro-Am League. Visit gamersaloon.com/Holiday Classic for more information. And that'll do it. This is Prophecy signing out. See you.